I think you still need a U-shape just because if you want to use it, there's some U-shape.
I want to ask her about this.
Oh, man. It's going against her. Yeah, you're eating this.
There aren't a lot of things on there. I'm anticipating just
Just opening up like a G so that you can push the outside.
I can. Kayla's coming about 7:30. Travis is not, but he submitted a written document, and he will be here. He was in Chicago the weekend, so he's traveling back. So he said if we need him in the future, let him know.
That's time. Because I've never seen him do anything. No, I agree. We were all saying the exact same thing in the car.
Oh.
Okay, so here's my kiss. Okay, so then here's I'll see.
Well, we'll call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is roll call.
Brian?
Here.
Tyler?
Here.
Kim? Here. John?
Here.
And Deb?
Here.
Greg, she'll be back.
And is there any changes or amendments to the agenda?
The Kids Club will not be here in person tonight.
We do have, did you bring the, they have some, invitations to their open house, is that right, Stacy?
Yeah.
They were going to be here, but one of the ladies had to be at a funeral, and another person had to be at the Boone site. So I do have some things to share with you when you get to that, or if you want to do that now, whatever you'd like to say.
Move to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved. Okay, do you like to hand out anything for the kids club, or just go into long range?
We will get something.
We'll wait for Hayla for that.
We'll get something to you as far as there's the invitation that they have. They're having an open house on Wednesday, October 18th from 5:30 to 7:30 in the intermediate school. They will be serving dinner, and everyone is welcome to attend. So, wow. Together, the Kids Club program currently serves 120 kids. The elementary site has 43 full-time children and 20 drop-in children. The intermediate site has 31 full-time children and 26 drop-in children. So that they've had a successful summer program where they had approximately 110 children total. There was a waiting list for our summer program, mostly due to transportation issues. We might need to see about what they do is in the summer they contract with us to, they go to the pool in different places, and they might want to see about getting a second bus so that more families can be involved. And then there is currently a short waiting list at the elementary. The intermediate does not have a waiting list and is accepting more children. Just to let them know if you have any questions, and again, they're sorry for the change in their plans or any inconveniences this might have had.
So, do we want to discuss any of the long-range plan or wait for Hayla to come? Do you guys want to have any discussions prior to him arriving? You just want to, we'll wait till he comes in. Okay, let's skip on down to the oral reports, 2017-18 district priorities.
Okay. The posters are in right behind. Holly is the new one that's up. We have them out in the buildings. I'm going to be putting out something to the entire district, but I know like a couple of you asked if we could go ahead and get information out if you have something that you wanted to put it out on through social media. It's available and ready to go. You can see what we did the other day for our administrative team. We tried to go through the different areas, and one of the things that we were talking about early on before some of you got here, we were just talking about this setup, And what we've done is we've tried to get this so that it's kind of a checkpoint. And what happens is they have the different 3 to 5 year priorities, and then they have the annual goals that are set there, and then the people responsible, and then the action steps that we would have there. So as you look at these, there is not checkpoints that are the next steps, but what happens is when something is turned red, that's the time that we're going to be talking about it. So like when Brian and I were talking about it earlier, you know, well, okay, if there's something on here that was red, we know we need to go ahead and be discussing that. Just take a look at what the information that's there. And then again, who all is involved. A lot of the times it's the administrative team or in general. And then just some of the things as far as what will be happening there. We tried to go ahead and at least give some indication of some things that we'd be looking at. There aren't any that are read tonight, by the way, but there will be, I would guess, maybe next month, depending on what the scenario would be. Hopefully you've had a chance. I know that came to you late. Apologies for that. So you haven't had a lot of time to look at that as a board. But this is a way that we can go ahead and hopefully be able to have some benchmarks or some check marks in here that we can say, how are we doing this and what are we doing? And that gives you an opportunity to ask questions.
Any questions for Lindsay on the district priorities?
Lindsay, on the last one, on the culture of continuous learning in the professional development plan, it says under number 1, it says based on district priorities, professional development plans will be created for each group. Is it at a group level or are these personal?
I think it can be a variety of that. Is that correct from
This is disconnected from the ICDPs, so
Right.
that's different. So these are what our professional development plan is for our staff, what it is for principals, what our administration, what it is for the coaches. So it's not specific to an individual teacher. It would be to whatever their subgroup category is.
But do individuals have plans?
They have individual career development plans, which aren't necessarily based on, I mean, they're connected to our professional development, but they're actually things that they as a team or as an individual want to explore. We don't create those for them, though. That's something they do.
I wouldn't expect that you would create them, but I would expect that everybody would have one.
Yeah,
You would
everybody
help
does have one.
facilitate
Yep.
the
You can
development,
have it on
individual
your-
development.
You can have it on your own, or you can do it as a team with someone, a partner, or, I mean, like a grade level might do it, or a person might say, you know what, I really would rather, this is something I was thinking of doing on my own. So it's really up to the individual as to the name individual.
How individual it is.
Yeah.
I would have thought that there would be individual as well as group, but
But,
Is it?
I mean, we can certainly, it's just, that's something we do every year. It's not a new or different or,
If somebody does it as a group, they still have to report, I mean, they're still, like they have to do the right.
Still accountable.
Yeah.
So one thing that is a little bit difficult too is if we put it in this goal, then there's individual career development plans are part of the evaluation process. So that would be, I guess, a piece that we're trying to kind of figure out how to skirt that.
that would
with
be,
them.
so individual career development plans are happening,
Mhm.
right? So, I mean, that's, when I see professional development, culture of continuous learning, I get the group part, but I'm just trying to understand at the individual level and to Vic's word, accountability, what that looks like.
It's a requirement of anybody every year.
Aren't there some, I'm sorry,
No, go
Brian.
ahead.
Aren't there some though, if you look under 21st century learning?
Mhm.
I mean, it does reference individual,
So what we had done with that
Development,
goal is
right.
because
yeah.
there was less the desire to see the actual data and more to see how the data is, the strategies we use.
Yeah.
Oftentimes teachers' individual career development plans are focused around some of those improvement efforts that grade levels have chosen to take on. And so that's kind of what we are planning on sharing out. I mean, obviously you'll see the data piece as well, but that's one of the things like we talked a little bit with our teachers about, hey, would you be willing to come and share
Yeah.
what you're doing as your ICDP this year in reference to how it's meeting, working to meet student achievement goals.
And last time we talked about the new option for the TQ dollars with that individualized professional learning plan, which now we have all these different plans out there. And that a teacher could tie that to their career development plan if they want to, or they can do some other sort of action research or some other sort of growth plan of their choosing, as long as it fits within the realm of our goals.
So I just have a question, and this might not be the best time to ask it, but with these professional development things, is this a part where they're taken off and they don't have school that Wednesday or something? Or is this something that these teachers have to do outside? Do we bake in time for this, all of this development, into their normal day, I guess is what I'm saying?
Some of it is, and the TQ one that we talked about last time, that is really additional time. It's additional dollars. I mean,
Yep.
and that's part of that. So some of it is going to be in when they're doing things in their classroom, and some of that's going to be outside time. ICDP, they're given some time to do that work during they might be doing it during PLC time, they might be doing it during prep time. I mean, there's a wealth of time during the school year that could be happening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that some of that couldn't be happening off of contract time too. It just would depend on if they're doing it on their own, or if they're doing it with you know, a duo or a team, or
Any other questions? Thank you, Lindsay. And Mr. Haley, before I let you get very settled, the dance floor is yours. Oh, boy.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
First of all, I apologize that I had some problems trying to post this large file on Friday and everyone was gone, so I'm technology challenged. But anyway, as you requested, you have the draft of the report, and there's just 4 pages of text, and there's some exhibits, and then the draft slideshow. What we did was we met with administrators on Friday, and there was more extensive changes than what I anticipated, but it was a very productive, very good meeting. And we're still, I think we're very close to, and we have ready to present to you on the 16th. There'll be a good conversation and dialogue between what we present, and you can ask questions as well too. So, but unfortunately, some of the exhibits in the slideshow don't match with what the budgets were. So if you did go through them, you say, well, this doesn't make sense. That's why. So we are working to update the slideshow. And in particular, the high school showed more classrooms than what actually we're proposing to do, and we'll explain that more next week because of the cost. We're going to shoot for 5 years versus 10 years. But there has been some adjustments. So Gail, if you want to just go through, I'll just quickly give a little synopsis. We just talked about is this is kind of a summary of what our charge was, and then we do have in the slideshow a summation of where you're at in terms of growth. And this year, high school is about 3% more, middle school, intermediate school is about where we had projected. And the elementary school is a little less, probably due to probably your open enrollment policy as well too. But anyway, it's comfortable knowing that we're not, and one of the concerns we had before was the elementary school will just go, crazy in terms of enrollment, and we need a bigger school, more quickly. And apparently at this point in time, that's not the case. Next page. I just summarized the fact of our meeting we had with the group. And then the one thing, just as a footnote, last year we were here and talking to the previous middle school principal, indicated that the vocal and band wasn't really much of an issue. Well, it is an issue this year, and so I want you to be aware of that, and that's one of the questions I have for you tonight is, we do not have any schemes or proposed enlargements to the band or vocal at the middle school. If that's something that you want us to look into, we can do some quick, budgets. But right now, there's nothing included in the report on that. That was kind of something that came up that we had not really anticipated. I want you to be aware of that they're kind of bursting at the seams. kind of like what's happening at the high school as well too. Next slide. And then it just kind of talks about some of the projects, and then also just whenever I put things in all bold or all capitals, please read this. These slides the slides need to be, they will be revised, and rumor has it that your board secretary is going to go somewhere midweek, so we will have something to her by midweek, so you'll have more than enough time, I think, to go through and read through it. The text will probably not change a whole lot, the budgets won't change a whole lot, and quite a few of the slides will be the same, but some of the other projects will, and some of the priorities got swithed around. So anyway, I just don't want you to spend a lot of time reading through the slides and say, oh shoot, these are different. So anyway, and then so, and actually, we were asked to have the administrator narratives in this week's edition, and actually all administrators, because it's like way will be gone, they're, they exceed and everything, they got to ahead of time, so they're actually in here, so you can go ahead and read through them and kind of get their take on the facilities. So what we did was, this is updated as of Friday afternoon, and we went ahead and went with 3 different groups of priorities: highest, secondary, and tertiary. And these are not following the board's 4 priorities. These are basically what the administrators believe and we believe are the highest priorities, secondary, but also taking into account that we're trying to help you achieve, adequate educational space, good condition in the building facilities, 21st century learning, and then other projects, which could be fine arts and athletics, and other designated projects. So we intentionally did not try and say, okay, you can only do $12 million worth of projects. We said, let's get them grouped, what's really important, and then let the numbers come out, and that's when we start talking, back and forth as a group to decide what we want to fit into a potential bond issue. So the 2 pages, we have grouped by school in order of priority, and there's no logic that elementary school 1 is the highest priority. It's just more I numbered them, 1 through 25, I think it is. Just so when we're talking about it, you say, let's just move project 24 up to, actually at 27, move project 24, up. Makes it easier to talk about versus trying to have these long titles, essentially. So, and then on the next page, give you kind of a synopsis. That just kind of gives you a summary. So in the first column, it just gives the building, second column is the budgets, and the third one, just for discussion, gives you kind of a running total. So let's just say, I think it's 13.3, I think is the highest priority, and then it's like 14.7. 14.7. So let's just say, for sake of discussion, that you had available $14 million. We knew that maybe we could do all the highest priorities and maybe a couple of the secondary ones. But if it's like $12 million, well, we know we may have a little bit difficulty getting down to the secondary, and we maybe have to look at trimming 1 or 2 of the highest priorities. But it's a tool for us to kind of talk about and have that information in our hands. And I think the next pages are just elementary, intermediate, middle school, high school narratives, and then we have, I think, fine arts, and then and yeah, all the staff did a great job kind of summarizing the issues as to kind of give you a snapshot of their perspective. And then it just goes in the slideshow, and then I probably don't want to spend a lot of time going through the slideshow at this point in time because there's some changes coming up. But basically, it'll just go through all the buildings, and you'll have a time to look at it ahead of time. The goal is the first hour next Monday night is to just kind of go through this data, a little more detail in the slideshow, and then you can ask questions as we're going through. And then hour 2, hopefully we can go ahead and really, have a good conversation amongst everybody who's present, and then arrive at some next steps, which we will have in a slideshow. And it's not here yet, we're still finishing up at the next steps that we want to go through in order to get to a bond issue. And then the other thing is that, as we've talked before, this is a little different than doing a new elementary school or a new high school, because there's so many different projects and they're scattered over all these different buildings. I think we're going to talk about, before we make a final decision, what process we want to go through to make sure, you know, the focus groups are all on board as well too. So I'll share some ideas with you about that next week, get your take on that as well too. So we want to make sure that we get this right. I know you want to get it right, and the community feels very comfortable that this is what's going to meet the needs of the district as well too. Tyler, you have some questions?
Yeah, the tables you went through were very helpful, but this is for the administrative team, Mr. Beecher. I mean, so that's what you guys worked through, and as a team, you're comfortable with those, yeah, that table and the table before that. You guys got in a cage match and you just kind of wrestled through that, or I mean, but I'm just curious.
That'd be a good way of saying it.
I'd just like to hear from the administrative
Yeah.
team, because that seemed like a nice summary, a little different than what we've been looking at, but everybody had input and I mean, I'd just like to hear how that went.
Anyone?
Well, I think it went really well. I mean, it was long, and I think we had breakfast pizza to help us get through it. But I think one thing we want to talk about Monday with you in a more casual setting, or just like the rationale between some of them, and then the what about this idea to maybe get another one, you know, moving that around and really looking at numbers more, because we just moved, like John said, we didn't really look at numbers or what ballpark we really need to be in. So then that nitty-gritty is going to have to come next week, probably somewhere.
But I guess you've got highest priorities, secondary priorities, tertiary priorities. I mean, you feel comfortable with where things are sitting relative to not just this building or that building, but that it's there's some continuity and consistency across all of them for why they're a first priority versus a second priority.
And that looks considerably different. I mean, there were parts of it that are still the same, but I mean, over the course of the 3 to 4 hours to 7 hours we worked on it, things changed, you know, and there were lots of discussion, open discussion back and forth, and good, healthy discussion, I think, that brought some things up on the list and other things down on the list. And I think as a group, we felt pretty comfortable with the process.
I think the heartburn a little bit is that at the elementary school, the finishes, I think that would be something that we want to talk about in more depth, you know, next week. I think, I mean, I know Stacy just said, you know, items 1 through 7 are really important, you know, to her. So it would be, you know, 8, the finish upgrades, but that's something that we knew was starting to get, well, everything can't be a first priority, so we tried to, you know, make some judgment calls on that. So, and then on the high school, just when you talk about the fine arts, fine arts got to be pretty expensive. It's a good size room. And also there's work being done inside the room as well too. And then, you know, the VOTAC. So we'll go through the rationale. And I think that, let's see, Tim's not here, but we talked at length about the athletics too, so.
And I think that we've talked too with John about, it was a good conversation. I don't know if John was planning on staying as long as we kept him captive here, but it was a good conversation. The other thing is, I know that there's a couple things that you're doing a little bit more digging into it to see, you know, if something's a high alternative, if there's another possibility that could fit into that. But there's just like when we had the meetings and people met, the passion is there, and the passion was there when we met Friday morning about what we were looking at doing, and it was very cordial, I thought.
Yeah, no, it was a very productive meeting, and so yeah, the one thing that is not shown on athletics that we are working on is to give you a price to do practice field. I was having a hard time trying to figure out how to get that all grouped in, because what was happening was I put in the project twice, it just pushed the numbers way high, so I'm going to probably have a different, for example, project 23 is, you know, the new baseball stadium facility. Well, the other option is developing a new practice. It's basically building a practice field where the new high school fields are going to be. That's not shown on here right now, so we're going to give you a second option down here. It's here or here, but when I put it all in here, it pushed the numbers up a lot higher. And so anyway, so we want to make sure there's clarity, and so we can quickly go through the data and then give you information so you can make some decisions that are informed decisions going forward. And there was one number I had transposed, one number that everyone was saying, it can't cost that much money for this. I think it was the 5th grade science classroom that said it was like $410,000. And she says, oh my God, what are we doing? You know, well, that was flipped with the mechanical. So I got those switched around, so anyway. But that's why it's a draft and all capital letters, and we're still working through it. But we're trying to make sure we get, you know, all the data for you. But
so the team feels good about that process, not that it's done or that's that, but working through. So just 2 quick questions that came up. So we toured the high school and the middle school this evening. And can you just briefly discuss it? You started to talk about the additional classrooms at the high school, and then I thought I heard you say, but maybe we won't plan for so far out. But what assumptions are you using for the high school at this point for the classroom needs?
well, we gave 2 options in phase 1 that showed we could do like 3 or 4 classrooms and catch it for 5-6 years, and then you'd have to put on another 3 or 4 classrooms. And given the fact that we saw how much it was starting to add up to, it was well over $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.3 million, I think, for those additional 4 classrooms. And given the fact of wondering about staffing, we don't want to build classrooms and not be able to staff them as well too. The decision was made, you know, let's go for 5 years versus trying to do, you know, 10 years. Now we can give you the numbers. I can certainly provide those numbers and have a separate slide that would show doing all 7 of them. That's not a problem. It's already done. I got the budgets and give you an option to talk about, and I'd be happy to do that. It's already there. The data's there. It's just more or less we're trying to.
I think we'll want that because
okay.
I don't want to speak for the board, but I'll speak for myself, is that, you know, the basic idea has been these are things we want to do, and we want to try to get out 10 years.
Yep.
Because we don't want to continue to come back to the community
Yep.
and say, hey, we got another bond and another bond and another bond. We may have to make choices like that, but I think we'll want to see what those options
Yep.
are next Monday.
Yep. So we'll have a couple more. We'll have a couple optional scenarios that we can just mix and match pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was about $1.3 million difference.
Yeah, it was quite a bit.
3 and 7.
But we'll give you both data and then go from there. Did you have another other comment or?
I would appreciate the middle school. Go ahead and, don't you think, add in the band and vocal information if it's not in there, if it's not too much.
Okay. I won't have time, Kim, to put drawings together, but I'll just do some quick square footages and then give you a data
Some
point.
numbers.
Yep. Yep.
And will we attempt the deliverable for next Monday, if we're successful, is a list that we would say, well, we're ready to entertain a group to now come in and say, hey, we'll want to lead a bond referendum
Right.
towards this, right? But within that information, not all the projects would be in 2018, 2019.
Right.
Some of them might be several years out, but I think the initial intent was that we would go for a bond that would cover for a number of years, right? So will we attempt next Monday to try to figure out which ones are immediate and which one might be 3 or 4 years out?
I can suggest some for you. Just give you a proposed, list of one to talk at least you got something to look at, and then we can talk about it as a group. And I'll just use the same numbers. We can just kind of mix and match or switch them around as well too. And actually, probably I can just send an active Excel file too if we want. We can just play around with it if we want to. Of course, we'll just add them and subtract them. Usually, I try and do that. Usually, it gets all messed up.
One of the things, John, too, that I've heard the different building administrators say, this is something that they would like to see happen, but it wouldn't have to happen tomorrow. So, their input might be also a positive thing. And it's entirely, you do this for a living, so however you want to do it. But I know I've heard him say, even in our tours tonight, I've heard you talk about, well, it may not need to be done, next year, but it will be possibly in the very near future.
Well, why not put together a list I want to make sure I respect that I can get it out before Yale takes off. Then I can send it to the administrators. You can look at it, and then we can do what we did last time. If you want to shift some things around, you'll see at least one list, and then we can bring another list if there needs to be any tweaks or adjustments. Talk about that, at the board meeting and keep the conversation going and keep on time. That's a good suggestion, Lindsay. I don't want to.
You can come out. We're meeting Wednesday. You could have breakfast pizza again, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. But you're more than welcome to come in.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Any additional questions for John? Administrators, do you have any questions? All right. Well, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, good report.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Administrators report.
Looks like it's tiger time.
All right, so we're going to talk about Tiger Town tonight. I'm going to share that with you guys, and just in case you have parents that ask you, because this is something new at the middle school, and I brought Holly Lester and Jeff Barr with me, and so they're just going to chime in and share a few things. So if you have a student in the middle school, or if parents approach you and they're curious about this Tiger Town is really how we deliver interventions. So interventions are required by law, specifically in reading. We're required to deliver those interventions. And in the past, what we've done for a number of years is we just pulled kids when we could. So kids that were struggling in math, struggling in reading, we would just pull them from study hall or pull them from chorus or band when the teachers were available, and form small groups and deliver interventions that way. And now what we have is actually a period that's scheduled into the day. So there's a scheduled time that all kids are available, all teachers are available to deliver interventions. So. And so what we've got is we've got them grouped, and so there are some priority. I know that's hard to see with the dark background and the light font. I apologize for that. But so we have some priority options. So kids that need intensive reading interventions, intensive math. We have a couple groups that are decoding or fluency groups, and then also some social or academic skills. Right now we have an organizational group going, students that need organizational support. So those interventions take priority. So a student would be, if they need those, they're scheduled into those. The students that aren't then can choose between some of those other options that we have. So we have a Genius Hour. That's what Holly's doing this time. If you're familiar with what Mr. Hales has done in his 4th grade class, it's really like kids pick a passion project, so something they want to learn more about or do, and Holly's going to speak to maybe some of the projects that she's had involved with, or with the other Genius Hour teachers. So we actually stole that right from Mr. Hales. He came over, talked to the staff, so should give him credit for that. We have one called Current Events. In our current social studies curriculum, we do touch on current events, but we don't provide a lot of depth to that, and so we felt like this is a good way to tie some of that in. Unfortunately, the teachers who teach that, none of them could be here tonight. I asked them some to come to speak about that. So it's just more talking about what's happening in the world, how's that tie into what's happened in the past, what might that lead to, the future. We also have one sustained silent reading, and this is for kids that really just want some time to sit and read. And so what we've done is they've taken a survey where it asks them their favorite genre and books they've liked in the past, but then also just has a bunch of different questions there to gauge their interest. And then Mrs. Immerman and the teachers went through and identified some potential books they might like. And then when they're done with the book, they fill out a survey on that, kind of like an Amazon-style review, so they rate that book. And so what we have is that we're building a database basically by kids, so they can see the reviews by their peers. And so sustained silent reading. And then we also have our ELP, so Mrs. Moritz delivers ELP time during our exploratory. This is another option where she can serve some kids who choose to do that, so they could do both the intervention time and the exploratory time, or they could choose one or the other. So that's the way it's currently fashioned. Holly, do you want to speak to just a few of the Genius Hour?
Yeah, I had a couple of the teachers. There's 6 of us.
I think there's quite a few.
Yeah, I think there's 6 of us, and he threw in those extra teachers. We started out with about 5 just because we had so many kids that were interested in Genius Hour, and it's a passion project. So the kids were asked to fill out, like on a sticky note, and say, okay, what are you passionate about? I'll let you guys pass. goes down, what are you passionate about? And then they were supposed to pick one of those to maybe engage themselves in and go a little bit deeper. And so one of the questions that I asked my group, if you turn over to the back where it says Passion Project at the end, it said, what would you really be interested in learning more about? How could this help you, or how could you share this with others? So one of the things I encourage my kids is, it's not necessarily all about you, can you take that a step further and take some things other places? So the bulleted points are some of the things that the kids were required to do if necessary, such as email parents and the teacher, us, if they have materials that cost. It's no cost to the school. If they're going to build something, then they needed to email their parents and already have a shopping list created, and were they able to do this? They participate for us on Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays for about 25 minutes at a time. And right now they're working. And in 2 weeks they will start presenting to our group. So my kids will present to my group, whether they're finished or not, they will present what they have come to do. Each Thursday then they're asked to reflect on what they did this week, what can they do next week, what worked, what didn't work, what can they do to improve, and then it says they'll present. So these were some of the ones that got handed back to me, like Carson Chittick. So he's trying to start a small business to earn money drawing pictures, okay? Obviously his passion is drawing. Carolyn Koenig, I have a video that I got just this morning that she created a roller coaster, and it was out of like water tubes or tubes that are about as big around as my little finger, and so she's got it going up and down and around and dropping through a funnel and down here. Elliot Randall is in my group, and I've just been really excited. He wrote his synopsis there on a children's book that he is doing with, he's going to have sea creatures, and so it's based on Owen the octopus, and everybody else then contributes to him, all those other sea animals, and in the meantime he has facts about each of those sea creatures that come back to Owen the octopus, and he's going to do it on Shutterfly. Bella Nelson, she's kind of done with hers for the time being right now. These peanut butter protein balls are totally awesome. Oh my gosh. So I think my group is, when I said, oh, they're great, they went to rush to get some from her, and I said, you just got to wait till she presents. She'll make some. Journey Lytle, she sent me a picture this afternoon. She has a prototype for a locker shelf to put in there, because the pre-made one, you still put your books or your spirals in there, and they still fall like this. So she has got a wooden one that will fit in that locker, and your books can stand up, and she's going to put labels and all kinds of stuff. Maddie Roche, she's crocheting, and I've got a group person in mind. Peter Starr on the back was real interesting. I went around one day while my kids were working and just took pictures of what people were doing, and it was amazing what he's working on for his drone. I have a picture of Joey Currens. I didn't write it down on this one, but I was looking through my pictures. He was making magnetic putty, and so his hands were all gooey and stuff, and trying to figure out how he could make this not so gooey and sticky, but yet it is something that you can put up. It's amazing what things these kids are coming up with, and I was really glad that Mike put me on Genius Hour and not on an intervention right away, because I was fired up about what these kids can do. So it's amazing.
Jeff, do you want to speak? So Jeff, Mr. Barr is part of the intensive reading, and we're doing that a little differently this year as well. Do you want to speak to maybe how we've done that in the past, how we're doing it this year?
Well, I'll speak definitely to how we're doing things. Here's just a quick look, and if you'd pass that along, on the big four that we're hitting. I am thrilled with what we're doing this year. We are taking a look at the idea of reciprocal reading. And I have, during my intervention time, 6 students, which is a wonderful number to work with. We're going through and we're using nonfiction articles, and we're hitting each of these ideas. We started with predicting, questioning, then we moved to clarifying, and then we'll be moving to summary soon. And the idea is, if you stay engaged with the text you're reading, you will understand it better. And that's what we're doing. These kids were picked from some of our lower test score kids that needed that extra little boost. And I know in 8th grade, I have a group. Mrs. Gilhouse has a group. I'm assuming there's some in the other grades then as well.
Yes, those are the only 2 in 8th grade, correct?
Yeah, the only 2 in 8th. And to have that small group time is awesome. And part of that, we deliver the interventions. Am I jumping ahead?
Well, yes. So those are some of them in current events.
Oh, there we go.
Well, that's actually, yeah, just a second. So for current events, they couldn't be here tonight, but like one of the things they're doing is like fantasy geography, where they draft countries, and when countries are in the news, and then they get points for that. That's one of the fun things that they came up with. So they're doing fantasy geography. But they are talking about, how the past has led us into, present situation, or how it might compare to present situation. And the nice thing about that is it's really student driven. So the teachers are up there, guiding that possibly, but the students are the ones making those connections. So the nice thing about those is a lot of them are student driven. It's you've heard student voice and choice before, and that's where this is coming from. So that's kind of what we're at now. So Gail, if you go to the next one then.
And I'm going to jump in quick. Those kids in the Genius Hour, current events, the Staying Silent reading and stuff, they got to choose what they wanted to do. So if they were not in a direct intervention.
So we're set up to do 8-week switches. We spent the first couple weeks just doing some team building in our Tiger Time groups, talking about digital citizenship, talking about growth mindset. So we delivered some curriculum during that time. And so we took the first couple weeks of school for that, and then we got into this, and we're set up for 8-week switches, so we'll have 4 switches. Kids in the priority groups will get a preferred option. So if your student needed intensive reading, they'll get out of that and get a choice. It's not right away though. So it's probably more likely going to be the 3rd or the 4th rotation where they'll get their choice, because we have to deliver those interventions, and specifically before state testing. And so, but they will get a preferred option. They're not stuck in intensive reading. They will get to do a Genius Hour or a sustained silent reading or whatever they want to do. We are also talking about adding others for the next rotation. So we are going to add an intensive intervention for keyboarding, because we have lots of kids who actually keyboard or type in the teens in terms of words per minute. And so what we're looking at right now is what would we consider a benchmark, and then we're going to, just like we would for intensive reading, we're going to deliver a keyboarding intervention for kids that aren't there, so they'll have time to learn those keyboarding fundamentals. We're also looking at doing for more of an advanced intervention, one in coding. So Mr. Stout's working on that. We're hoping to do that maybe after Christmas break and in the rotation 3 or 4. Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Sponheimer are talking about maybe doing like a music theory intervention. And so kids that really want to get more in depth in music and learning about, compiling ensembles or whatever can learn that. And then we've had teachers that ask if we can do, like, we have an intensive reading group and we have sustained silent reading, but can we do like more of advanced reading? So they're talking about doing a book club, where it's more of a book study around a particular book or a novel. And again, those are ones that kids can choose to do once we get those up and going. So, so in terms of the schedule, as we looked at this, and Mr. Billings laid out the vision for this before we left. And so he kind of said we need to do this differently. This is an idea. I actually spent some time talking to Amy, and then Carrie and Lindsay Good and Jen Schnormeyer and I sat down this summer and hammered it out, a lot of the details. And so a ton of credit to those ladies for doing that, because they helped me a ton. And then Carrie really was super supportive in helping identify resources and training, and all the intensive reading people. She paid for them to come up and learn that new system that we're doing, their reciprocal teaching, and to get trained on that. She paid people that were doing current events. She agreed to pay them in the summer to come in and work on that. And so Carrie's been invaluable to get this up and get this going. But as we looked at the research says interventions really need to be delivered 3 times a week. And so what we decided to do was do Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. The reason is because we lose 12 Wednesdays to early dismissals. And then we do lose a couple Fridays for different reasons where we may not have school. And so this would give us the most time with the interventions. And so they're 26 minutes a day, 3 times a week. So on the other days, then this is what we do, and Holly and Jeff can speak to this in just a second too. So this is a time on Wednesdays and Fridays where the kids are in like a study hall. It's a small group study hall. It's about the size of 15, so similar to a success center at the high school has done. So we kind of stole this from this high school. This is a time when teachers can reteach. So if Mrs. Lester last year needed to reteach kids, she was again pulling them from choir, pulling them from band, pulling them from an exploratory maybe, to reteach them a concept they didn't get. Now she doesn't have to do that. She's able to do that in the structure of this. And so kids are in study hall, however they can be requested by a teacher. Andy Eckert and Jen Schnormeyer made a request doc, just like the high school uses for Success Center, only it's our kids. And so teachers can request, and have kids come to them and can reteach then. And so they don't have to figure out a way to do that by pulling kids in. They're set up to do that. So we do the reteach on Wednesdays and Fridays. Holly, do you want to speak to maybe just how the system is different to?
You just can't imagine how much easier this has made my life. For Chris getting it jump started and for Mike being already on our staff and taking the ball rolling. And the first time I didn't have to leave study hall, and study hall is in my room. I'm not in charge of study hall, but I had kids pulling me here saying, okay, I need you here, but then I needed to go to MTSS and have my small group over there. And then I'd have extra kids in there. This is wonderful because then the kids can come, they can't just come to me. I have to request them, or they can come to me and say, please request me to come to your room today to work on POWs. That's always an option. And I think I had, my biggest group was like 7 or 8. But this makes a wonderful time. The kids in my group that don't have a place to go, that stay in my room, I work in the back, they work in the front, it's like study hall. They have been wonderful. Their job is to have things to do. You know, they're not listening to extra things, they're not doing games or whatever. It's kind of like a mini study hall, and for 20 minutes they ought to be able to handle themselves really well. So I've been able to reach kids that I never would have been able to reach before, and ones that would fall through the cracks. Those would be my intensive kids.
Well, and I really appreciate, again, with that small group size, and we took some time at the beginning of the year and built some real community within those groups, and I love those days. And the kids do too. We go through our missing work list. We make sure everybody's up to date on what they need to be up to date on, and we get some good work done.
Which we normally would not have the time
slot. And again, with
to,
kids I might not ever really get to work with, so I love it.
The nice thing about this is as we've grown, you know, it's important to keep that small school feel. And this, you know, that gets challenging. When 6th grade's got 136 kids, it's hard to get to know 136 kids really well. And at least this way, you know, in those smaller groups, they get to know that smaller group really, really well. And they form a pretty good bond. And also, we're hoping that we'll hear, or we'll see on the Gilbert Youth Survey, that when students, there's a question in there about an adult at school, you know, cares about me, we're hoping we'll see that, you know, that number's good anyway. We're hoping we'll see that get even better, that kids will understand that there is an adult advocate for me in the building, someone who knows me and cares about me. So we're hopeful that will reflect on that as well. So again, in the reteach, teacher can request kids. This gives kids a chance to get that essential content. So what the teachers deem, it's not we're working on homework, and it's not that, you know, hey, you know, I have a question about this assignment. This is like, okay, there's this essential concept, and these kids don't get it, and I've got to reteach it to them. I can't do it in the class because I've got, you know, 25 other kids. So this is a time I can pull those 2 or 3 or 5 kids and reteach them a concept that they didn't get. And then, of course, then they can use that time for work completion like a small study hall. And so I think at this point, you know, just want to see if the board has any questions about that, or I don't know if the administrators do or not, but or have any questions.
It was sad to lose an extra 10 minutes out of my class, but in the long run, it has been a blessing in disguise for intensive work with the kids that you need to pull in.
And it was a little worrisome losing that time, and then it's new. But as we got into it and really got this ball rolling, it's one of the greatest things.
When the staff heard that they were going to have different groups of kids on different days, and they're not necessarily in the same room all the time, like in in-service days, their eyes were about that big, saying, well, wait a minute, how am I going to keep all this straight? But they were super flexible, super patient. I couldn't say enough good things about them. And they hopped right in, rolled up their sleeves, got after it. I think it's off to a good start. I think, you know, all kids are getting what they want or what they need. Eventually they'll all get what they want, and so I think that's always a good thing. I think we're finding ways to get more student voice and choice. You know, I don't know, it wasn't on the list, but I was walking down the hall one day and somebody's playing the ukulele. That's what they wanted to do for their passion project, was learn to play the ukulele. So I could hear this little ukulele playing, and that's what they wanted to do. I thought that was awesome. You know, so Chris kind of laid that out. He set up the big picture, and then Carrie and Jen and Lindsay, I mean, they were a tremendous support, as I said, to iron out those details. So I feel like we're in a good spot.
And obviously they worked hard because it's been very organized for us.
That's great to hear.
It's been very organized.
So positive feedback from the teachers, any from the students or parents at this point? Or
I have not heard,
early to tell, right?
I haven't heard feedback from parents really either way, other than there are parents who think the Genius Hour, I've heard from Genius Hour's parents thinking, hey, this is really, this is really cool. You know, my son, he's in the sustained silent reading because he loves to read, and to have a time in the day where he could actually sit and read a book that he wants and not that he's told to, like he loves that. He's fired up about that. And so I haven't heard anything negative.
I think maybe when we get done with the first rotation here, if we would maybe, that's an option to throw out, just a short questionnaire to the kids and say, you know, a little what you call it, and have them answer, what do you think about this? And I think I have a couple kids that know they're not going to maybe get done with their project in time to present. You're going to present what you got done, and maybe by chance there's Genius Hour again, and you can sign up for the second one and you continue on. Or I've even talked to a couple kids and say, okay, this is what you did this time. What about taking it to this next level? You know, maybe you can sign up for it again. Maybe they want to try something else. That's one other thing that's nice, that there'll be some other options out there for them to try. Yep.
And I think my kids enjoy what we're doing. I mean, you know, it's reading comprehension, but they know why they're doing it, and we have a good time with it, and so I'd say they're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Good.
We'll see when boring Mrs. Lester gets to do intervention, math intervention the next time.
Thank you for presenting. Sorry,
sure.
no, it's a very simple question, very simple. I promise. What % is in the intervention side versus the sort of other option side?
What percent?
Of the students, yeah.
Priority versus
The interventions are small, so they're not any bigger than 6 kids per
Yeah,
teacher.
I've got 6.
So
There's 2
you know,
math.
it's a small percentage in the intervention side. The other ones then, so like a Genius Hour has 25 kids in it, you know. The thing for us was how identifying the staff that we can make this work, because that's 385 kids, you know, to all have somewhere, and you can't have your interventions be much bigger than 6 to 8. So how can we pull this off? And so we've got associates doing it. Megan Saldana, one of my secretaries, has a group. You know, I don't have a group, and Lindsay Good doesn't have a group, because if teachers are gone, you know, we need someone that can cover, and so that's where Lindsay's on maternity leave when she's back. But Jordan Sitzma, our at-risk person, comes over. She's part of an organizational group. That group's big enough, actually, we have 2 of them. So it's all hands on deck to get this done. But it's percentage-wise, you know, 80-20, but that's not it exactly.
Yeah.
Are the groups all like multiple, some in 6th, 7th, 8th, are they all combined or are they split? Like
It varies.
Some are.
The intervention groups are all
Great.
split by grade level. So there are like 4 6th grade intensive reading. There's 1 7th grade, and there's 2 8th grade for intensive reading. So they're all split like grade level. When you get into some of the other ones, they are mixed up a little bit. We try to, so if I had, let's say, 30 6th graders that want to do sustained silent reading, 25 of them are together, and then the other 5 get bumped in with the 7th graders. So that's kind of how they're arranged.
And I just find that that's not a big deal, because I've had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in my classes mixed up,
And club days
mixed
are
up.
across grade levels too, so.
Yeah,
it's a good
well,
opportunity.
looks like a great program, and keep the board in mind if you need a place for them to present. We love to see them.
I've signed up for the AIW camera when my kids present, so we're going to videotape all the
That's awesome.
presentations. So
Oh, okay.
there might be an opportunity that we'll share. And I don't know, I will encourage some of the others. Like I have this video, just got it today, of their roller coaster and stuff. But
And a lot of these things, you know, Jared Hale's in 4th grade. He's done Genius Hour for several years. I don't know if other teachers are doing it or not, but Jerry sent us the documents that he uses. We changed them, copied them. So, you know, Mr. Hale's may be having some things that, you know, you could come and see at the 4th grade level as well, just to give him credit for his work, so.
Great.
yeah,
Thank you very much for coming in this evening.
that was fun. I'm enjoying it.
Announcements and celebrations.
Anything you guys want to share?
I think we just celebrated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was a
great
celebration.
I just talked to the cross-country coaches on the way out. Our boys won the conference title, and our girls finished 2nd, so that's nice.
And middle school girls were 2nd, and middle school boys were 1st, with 2 of our middle school boys being the 1st and 2nd runners in the conference.
Nice.
So,
Oh, what a good job.
yeah, he did.
Anyone else have anything that they'd like to share that's going on, or celebrations, announcements? Just a couple of quick things. We talked about this when we were putting out the agenda, and maybe you've already seen things, but don't forget about the Gilbert School Carnival that will be held on Saturday, October 21st from 5 until 8 o'clock. A lot of great things that happen there that the PTO puts together. I wanted to make you aware of, and I'll get some information. This is just we're going to be doing some things. We got all kinds of storage out here. They talked about the size of the shop, but we got a lot of things out here. We're going to probably try to get and go through that and maybe get a sale going so that we get some of this stuff if we're not going to use it out and about. And then I just got off a call earlier today, and we did send a letter to CenturyLink, and there has not been a response. I know that was followed up by a phone call from Connor Wasson, which has represented us at Allers and Cooney. And I think what's happening is that the person that he's talking to said, I'm not sure that we have an easement there, but it's kind of a chain of command, and they have to go through that. So he said, well, maybe by the end of the week they can let us know where that's at. And that's on the property that we have south of the middle school. So just a couple quick things.
Well, that's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
So we didn't pay them for it.
We did, and she's holding the check, I think.
Check is in the file cabinet.
Yeah, very good. Good. Board reports?
I did include the proposed platform, which they look very similar to what our local board chose. So I have that in there. And everybody is registered that told me they wanted registered, so hopefully you received emails. And
Any other items on the board report? Okay. New business, certified enrollment.
we haven't certified, so this actual certified enrollment document isn't available until after we certify. So we had to do some handwritten information here. Bottom line, some of the lines here that we need to visit our resident students is 1321, which is up 60. But of that, we have 191 going out, which is up by 28 students. And open enrolled in is 190, which is 9 students down from last year. So open enrolled out versus open enrolled in, we are a -1. Preschool, we're up 1. And students in our chairs is 1511, and that's up 51. Percentage-wise, that's a little over 3%. This will be finalized on the 15th.
It's a pretty good budget projection, you guys.
Do we have any indication of why so many kids open enroll out?
Last year, I asked that same question,
Oh.
actually spurred by
What a great
Omar's
question.
Gail provided me with a nice packet, and I didn't count and calculate, but the bulk is continuance of education.
And it's the same.
Yeah, I mean,
Moving probably into the new residential areas, but maintaining their current
Same
school.
names.
Do we have that, sorry, this is my last question about this. Is that broken down by grade?
I don't.
We can get it. That is part of the certification. It'll break down by how many open enrolled out and in by grade.
That's fascinating.
So it'll be available after the 15th. So.
I'll come find you.
Okay. Yeah. A lot more detail after we finalize and certify it.
Do you need a motion on that, Gail?
No, it's just information.
All right.
But just in general, I mean, that's the first time since I've been on the board that we've gone negative on open enrollment. But and when you look at the matrix, it's just a factorial matrix.
Right.
Yep. I mean, there's only but
3 grades available.
yeah. So Unless we want to do something about the matrix, that's the direction it's going to go.
I mean, yeah, I guess at one point you say like, hey, maybe we could have another section. Sorry.
Well, if you,
Well, that's the question
by the
we're
way
at.
the matrix works, if you add a section, so if you get to those capacity places, like for example, our current second grade's at 24 kids, you know, that's a discussion you start to have, that, you know, if Amy as they go into third grade. So when you add that, then it just by nature adds more opportunity for open enrolled kids, because then you go 6 times whatever the number is, and then there's more spots available, so.
The most recent was when we increased our kindergarten, I believe, wasn't it? And we got to a point where the classes were so big that when we added that next section, we actually opened up, I want to say 7 or 8 seats to kids who wouldn't have been able to previously come.
That was packed, but
It was.
wow, yeah. All right, sorry. I did not mean to open that can of worms.
No, that's a good question. Mike and I have had discussions about at the middle school. What are your, go 6, 7, 8, what are your numbers?
136, 132, and 117.
We are pushing things a lot there. And we know it. I mean, it's not like we're falling asleep here. But the thing that we have to be realizing is if we continue to do that, especially in a 6th grade class, and I suppose that Amy and Stacy and probably Vic too could probably give examples. You know, some of those classes, we're going to have to look at it and see when do we make the move that we're going to have to go into like a 6th section. Or I was talking to Vic about in the situation with some of those Spanish numbers. We have some big Spanish classes, which is great, but it's how are we going to handle some of those? And that's not a section thing. That's more of a specific subject thing. And I know that Amy and Stacy would both have examples that they could throw out there too.
So is that discussion you have with the administrative team that you'll bring forward to us with recommendation? Or at what point do we say we're ready to have that conversation?
I think that we will be talking about what we can do. The thing that's going to be the challenge is, and we've talked about this all along, and I don't need to defer back to that, is what's going to happen with the state and how that's going to affect things. And that doesn't mean that we're going to all of a sudden say, oh, we're just going to wait for the state and we're going to have class sizes of 35 or 40. That's not what we're going to do. But we really have to look at that. And I know we've even talked about that when we met as a finance group just to see, you know, where things are at. Yes, I think that we will be talking about some of those priorities as we set those for hiring coming up here in the somewhat near future. Great things are happening though. There are many districts that would love to have this problem with increased enrollment, increased class sizes, and how do you handle all those things? So think of it in a positive.
Can I ask you a question? How do you handle like the homeschooled kids, the ones that actually like come and then, how do you factor those numbers in? They come and take advantage of the specials or maybe like do some of the activities but not all of them when you're trying to figure out classes, or are they just not, or they don't contribute that much to the numbers?
They will be, aren't they, Gail, in the certified enrollment? I don't know if you have.
Yeah, they're not in our seats, but if you see like these numbers here, when you see 0.9, 0.1, 0.04, those point students are dual enrolled, or those are the home, yeah, because they have a weighted enrollment, but they're not considered in any of these seats, in our seats, because they may be only taking maybe 1 or 2 classes. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. I'm just wondering, like, for example, when you're trying to figure out, okay, I need so much space in a band room because you know, you have like a flux because you have a larger number of kids who show up for band than do for like the regular school day. If, you know, how that works in, I mean, it makes it a little more complicated, but.
Well, they would be counted in the numbers that I gave. We don't currently have any that just come for like band.
Okay.
But in the numbers, so I would count them in the numbers I would say, so 136, 132, 117,
Okay.
we count those kids as kids that come for class.
Do you typically see that there's like a grade where they switch from homeschool to like being at school? So is there, can that like?
I don't think I particularly see a specific grade where that happens. I mean, maybe if I did 6th grade, just because that's the first year in the building, but I have some kids that decide in middle school to go halftime, you know, dual enroll halftime out, sometimes in middle school too. So no, I don't have I probably can give you a hard and fast answer and be accurate.
Amy or Stacy, do you guys see it at your buildings at a certain level where you start to see that happening more?
We probably see kind of an interesting opposite effect, is that I have kids come all the time for kindergarten, they'll come full-time kindergarten, and then they might start doing a dual enrolled system. And I would say that all of the kiddos that I have that are dual enrolled actually come for half of a day. So they either come in the literacy block, which is primarily in the morning, and then they go home in the afternoon, or vice versa. Parents do a literacy block and they come for math and specials and things like that.
So they're in the matrix. So what you're saying then, Vicki is including them in that enrollment matrix, the dual enrolled?
I'd have to go back and look at my exact
Okay.
numbers. It's so
I'm used to
kiddos.
seeing them as a part,
Yeah.
you know, when I look at a 0.4, 0.3, and these are whole numbers.
I'm
so that's
thinking from what I think that the matrix looks like at the elementary, they're counted as if their name is on a class roster. So because we don't have any who only come for specials, those kiddos probably wouldn't show up, but as long as they're on a homeroom roster, they would show up. For our numbers anyway, that might be a little different at the high school.
We do see a little bit of a spike at the high school level with our dual enrolled kids, just due to the fact that there's specialized classes that they're looking to take. That may be above and beyond what parents maybe can offer. So we do see some of those in our upper level classes. And that is factored in as we look at, actually people in seats. When we look at 32 kids in a class, they're still in a class sitting there. So even if it's just for 1 or 2 classes, that is a factor that needs to be taken into consideration for sure.
Any other questions on certified enrollment? Okay, School Improvement Advisory Committee.
Carrie, do you want to mention anything here? I think they're up here, but would you like to add anything?
Those are the, we do have, I just actually got one more name of somebody, Joshua Thompson, that just
Sweet.
emailed me back that said he would like to be a part of that. So if we could add his name to the list of the males, that would be great. But we've got the dates already posted.
Is there a requirement though by grade, or is that a different group?
What we've done is we've kind of married SIAC and DAC together, and that's why we've got the students on here too. So we've got a student from each, we've got building reps, we've got representation from different buildings, we've got different representation from different parent groups. And when I say parent groups, I just mean buildings and ages and just different demographics. And then we also have student representation too.
But if you took staff and school board and Duha and Omar off there, how many how many are left on that list?
Yeah.
If you took staff, school board, Omar, Duha, and students off there, how many are left?
How many parents?
Yeah.
That's
4 of the males.
Right? Austin Wooden, Austin Lepper, Andrew
There's
Murdoch.
Jeff, I don't know who Jeff Warren is.
He was just here.
He's
He's a teacher?
Teacher, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's
So he
3,
doesn't count.
and then Destiny, 4.
Yeah.
Don't you think we should have more parents in
Well,
there?
if you can find some more for me, Tyler, I'm very happy to put some on. I mean, we have reached out to people. I can, if you've got some other names for me, I've gotten some names. I asked Ryan for some names and I reached out to those people and.
In the past, I'll be honest, what we had done is we had 2 parents per grade level, and at the end of the day, about 7 or 8 people would regularly show up at a meeting. So
I don't think that's a reason not to have it.
No, we don't close it to just these people.
I realize that.
I mean, these are the people that are the standing committee. Anybody is absolutely welcome to come to SIAC, and we always have people that are not on this list that are welcome to come to the meetings. So that hasn't been an issue for us. But so we have our list that we have. These are our standing committee members. That's where that list has come from. But like I said, as we were sitting here, I got another email from somebody, Joshua Thompson, that said he would be very willing to be a part of that. So I said, let's add his name on there.
How many meetings, Carrie?
It's 4 meetings a year.
I mean, I just really, I'm not saying that that's something that's easy and that
No, and I'm not
because I
trying
know
to-
that that's something we talked about a couple of years ago when we did put them together. But I think we have to have more parents involved, and I'm not sure how you do that or what you do and how you do it at the building level, but to have 4 I mean, that's not enough.
I mean, and I will say, I have a list of people that I have reached out for. I just was not gonna put them on the list if I have not heard from them. If I have not, and they've been on it on the past, but if I have not been able to get a yes or no from them, I just could not put their name on the list. So I just didn't.
It's
But-
to Stacy's point. I mean, we don't need people on a list that aren't going to show up.
Yeah, and these,
We need
some of
as
them
a
are people that have
district to
showed up.
encourage parents to get involved with the SIAC.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
we
you
talked
gotta,
about that.
you gotta make it consequential. These parents need to know that this group does something. It's not just coming to a meeting, it's gotta be that they're involved in some sort of a decision-making process, they're providing input and feedback, not just, listening to a presentation and just showing up to the meeting. So I think that's important.
I think one of the things that we have done too, to address that is the fact that when there has been maybe a few items that have been presented, but we've also asked the group, what is it that you would like to see? What is it that, some of the topics that you would like to talk about? So we're just not, just not a set and get type of thing. So hopefully we are addressing that.
But Lindsay, I guess I'd ask you, what's your suggestion on how to get some parents involved?
We can reach out and try to contact more parents. I don't know. I mean, it's trying to get as many people to have as much say as possible. Now, like I said, we'll have people that are not on this list that will show up that night at that meeting. But I guess if they're not invited, maybe some of them won't show up. We can try to go out and reach out to get more.
I think it'll be most impactful, like I'm pulled up my list now, if I make some phone calls, like for my building, we each kind of make that, when that general statement goes out, it's not as impactful, so if I can make some personal phone calls, I think I can convince
I think it's kind of a
people to help
strategic
support that.
issue for the board in that we have that low level of engagement, so it's, what do we need to do different? And I don't have the answer, but I think from a strategy point of view is we have a lot of passionate parents about their students' education, and so, how do we think outside the box to engage? And I think it goes to what Omar was talking about is we have to up the ante of what those meetings are about. I think, to get more engagement.
And you've put some good communication tools in place recently, even if it's sending out a text that's, looking for, I don't know if you want to open it up that big because, what if you had 100 people?
The next, SIAC does have to have a 50-50 ratio, so it has to have some of those things. So sometimes
Right.
if we get 50 women who say they'll join, we have to come up with 50 men to put on the
Right,
roster.
right, yeah.
I think Amy had a good idea though, because if you know parents that would want to be involved and you give it that personal touch from that building principal, that may be a way to get them in. Whereas if we said, okay, here's someone that's called you about this or that, that may be a very good idea. So maybe we can.
But I mean, if you put that information out district-wide and you say, hey, this is SIAC, this is what we do, we need a percentage of females versus males, first to contact us, or contact us and we'll work through the list just to balance it out, I think you will get a response. But it just has to be visible.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to be aware. I mean, frankly, I was not on the SIAC committee, but I tried to attend the meetings. They are not as advertised as the board meeting. We all get a text that says board meeting tomorrow. We just got one for conferences. That doesn't go out for SIAC. So I think they need to be more visible to people to be aware that this exists and we want your input.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's 2 really important things there, or maybe 3, and we've sort of talked about them before. Definitely, Lindsay, we've talked about this. I think that we need, that personal invitation is really important. Feeling like I'm needed, I'm wanted is really good. Like, Amy, I like what you're saying about that. secondarily, some sort of compelling vision, like here's what we do and here's why it's important you're here. And then third, some sort of agency, like you're talking about, Omar, like here's how you can make a difference. Like it's not just an extended sort of like listening time, but hey, here's all the information, let's have a really great discussion and figure some stuff out together, like that sense of agency. And I think whatever communication that we do as a school really should kind of include those components to it if we want people to come and show up. I mean, I don't know, just talking about the communication committee with Amy, like that's really important. That's been like a really great, I think it's been a really great committee, and those three components were very present for the 2 or plus years now it's been going. And I think I'd love to see the SIAC have that sort of like momentum and excitement around it too.
Well, I think with what we have going on in the springtime, this would really set the stage this fall as to, hey, we're going to be doing some great things in the spring with regard to our 3 to 5 year long-term priorities. So let's be spading that ground, you know, this fall and really hit the ground running this spring. And so the idea is we're going to be, you know, doing some strategic planning next spring, and we want to get stakeholders involved. And so, you know, the gentleman that talked at our the school board forum about technology, well, he would be a good one to have there, right? Is what do we want to do for technology on the go forward, and all of those issues that people feel strongly about. Let's get those folks in the room if we can get them.
I agree. I have to go back. I think if you just broadcast something, that's a great way to do it. You're probably going to see a lot of the same people that you see on other committees. I think part of what I hope our district becomes is more inviting. So how do you bring people in who might be cautiously sitting on the sidelines, right? They want to get involved. I'm not sure that I know what I need to know to get involved, you know, things like that. So I really like the idea. Well, first of all, I think it should be across. There isn't one targeted solution that can fix this, but I do like the idea of us reaching out to people who maybe the administrators know, who, you know what, maybe this is a chance for somebody to get involved. And from there, it kind of spreads, right? So I just think that's important.
Let them realize like how serious it is. Like for example, if there's a date that I can't make it, I have to make sure that someone's going to fill in for me that day, so that we have somebody in that seat that's also giving, you know, like their opinion from the viewpoint of a parent.
Do we want to go ahead and approve this committee with the idea to get more parents, or I think we have a meeting coming up on October 19th.
Just because we approved this list of people who have said that they'll commit doesn't mean that, like you said, that it can't grow. So there's no harm in approving the list.
We take attendance at every meeting. Nobody's
Right.
ever going to be turned away to go to a meeting.
Right.
But there's a difference between attendance and somebody that's expected to be there.
Right.
And there's a difference between, especially at the accountability, and that's what we want. So.
But is there what I'm asking, is there a legal requirement prior to your first meeting?
No,
that
and we don't have any
committee?
kind of, I mean, it's not like you're having a voting or anything where that.
The legal requirement is that you do have to approve the list of who's on there. That has to be at some point done. And then
So
outside
if we
of
want
that,
an amended list at the next meeting, we could definitely do that.
I'd be in favor of that.
Why not? I mean, I would suggest let's do that then. Let's
Should
at
we
least
table
start
this
with
right now?
this. I would say let's do
I move to
this
approve
one.
this list
Okay.
with the expectation that it will have some additional parent involvement, whatever that looks like, however you do that, to balance out the staff and the students and Omar and Duha and Sura.
We are.
That's pretty strong family representation right there.
Yeah, you're doing your part, boy.
So I move to approve that.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, stands approved. Thank you, good discussion. General fund financial report.
Was it last Thursday? We met with Travis. I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember what day it was.
Thursday.
But we met with Travis with Piper Jaffray. And our meeting at the very beginning, we talked about our debt service and how that works and what we had. And so in your packet, I did provide the document that he provided everybody else, that he provided us. And then we went through and we talked about what is anticipated for SSA. And Deb was there and John was there. And I think we're anticipating a 0% is what he was for SSA. And they're still talking across the board cuts yet. So a little bit on that. But what I have in your packets tonight is a sample of board reports for general fund. And these are from ISFIS. And with working with ISFIS, this is also documents that are tied into a 5-year projection model. So we're keeping a common message, and if you look at the top of the revenue and the expenditures, you will also, these are common, you will see these at the published budget, the April 15th, as the board publishes the budget for the district. And so we're keeping that common revenues, common expenditures. And so on page 1, this is basically our actual numbers, and these are, I'm presenting these tonight, they're still a raw form. They won't be finalized and tweaked, and we have another 2 weeks before these reports will be in a final form. But right now, it's these, page 1 is actual expenditures for just general fund, revenue on top, expenditures on the bottom. I have a little question, a little thing here. We're missing a beginning fund balance here that's to come yet. And then basically the beginning fund on the bottom will be our cash position. And it'll be spread across in the 12 months. And then, so this is our actuals. On page 2 is a visual of page 1, if you're a visual person.
This is nice.
And then, of course, this is our monthly expenditure, revenue expenditures, year to date. And then over here, this is kind of bogus because we're missing some information yet. And then on page 3 is, this is our actuals compared to our line item, which is, and this is, if it's red, it should be a concern. If it's green, there should be no concern, or it's good, or whatever terminology you want to use. And but they're working on this because right now it's just spread out equally over 12 months, and we know school business is not that way. So they're still tweaking that yet. And then you have the monthly gain and loss, and then this is tied to, these are the actual revenue and expenditures, and then of course you have a visual on the next page of that. And then this is our line item, budget, revenue and expenditures. And so page 3 and 5 are working together of actuals versus our line item budget. And then you have the visual. And then on this last page is kind of our forecasting to June 30th. We're working on keeping track of our unspent authority, our ending fund balance, of revenues and expenditures, and then forecasting what it looks like on June 30th. And what I'm asking, I put a request in that they've asked also put our solvency ratio on here too, so we can keep track of that. And so I put that request in, and Travis said that he'll be working on that to add that in there, so we have it all on one page. And then over here to the right is basically our aid and levy, is our unspent balance. Now we usually only look at this one time a year, but forecasting, it's an important tool because you don't want to overspend your means for that particular year. If you do, then you dip into your previous balance, your ending fund balance, so it's good to keep track of it so you spend your means for that year. So I wanted to we looked at this a little bit with Travis, and when we talk about common messages, what's important, and working with ISFIS on our long-range facility plan, and Travis is a partnership with ISFIS. And this, I basically take my general ledgers and load these in there. So there's no, the data entry is very, very minimal. So wanted to present these tonight, and this is just general fund. And then the other financial information you're used to seeing for the other funds, I put into the consent agenda.
I really like this, Gail. So it looks like some of the numbers are still being loaded potentially, or is...
Yeah, it's beta, so there's still, this is work in progress right now.
Yes.
So one question, just so that once we get that loaded and all, when you go to page 5, this is all budget, right? Do you anticipate that we'll do straight line, or will it be anticipated like when we get state allocation or when we get tax?
Their goal is, right now, state cost equally 12 payments.
Yep.
They want to do it more like what we actually receive when like
receive it.
property taxes.
Yeah, right.
It's April, it's September and April.
Rather than flat line,
Right,
540,000 each
right.
month.
Yep.
Okay.
So those are some of the enhancements that they're going to.
That will be baked into the budget so that it'll, okay.
Yeah, in the first swag, I've done this before on nonprofits, and sometimes the first swag is you take last year's as a percent, and you say we're gonna start there, then we'll just use last year's as the proxy, unless you know of items that will for sure fall in.
Their goal is 2 weeks because they are taking this out, and they're using our document right now. We're kind of a guinea pig for them. They are taking a training start the end of October in 2 weeks, so they're having training sessions for schools. So it should be in final form by then when they go out to train. And then we also use this information when we did some forecasting on looking at, okay, we did some scenarios of if the SSA was 1% and our expenditures were 3%, what would that look like for Gilbert? Where is our our hold even point? What kind of SSA do we need? Also, we can throw in, okay, if we add staff, how does that affect? And it doesn't look pretty, but
very helpful, the information. Cool. Yeah. The information is powerful. Yeah. So for the idea of, we need to make sure the numbers are hard, but he put in a 0 SSA and either 2 or you could control the growth variable, so you could put in 2 or 3%, and then you could grow your expenses by a fixed amount and project what that looks like over 5 years. So I think coming into spring, we're going to have some very hard numbers that we're going to be able to plan much better than we had been able to do before. And if things change on the fly, we can change our assumptions on the fly and say, as a result of this, now we can do this. But it looked to be software that would be very helpful for us.
And it's just an Excel, format, so very simple. One thing that we did see is, even though our enrollment increased, which is it's great for Gilbert, it's looking at what we're talking about increasing, our class sizes and adding, what did that look like with a 0 SSA? Mm-hmm. What does that look like with what percent do we need to make it work? Right. So great tool for when we talk about prioritizing. We're going to have to prioritize, and so it'll be great to put those scenarios in there, and then link it back into our monthly reports. Circle back around to our monthly reports and have it all tied together. So we're always looking at the same message, the same document, and it's meaningful.
Yeah. Same group that does the enrollment projections, right?
Yes.
So they tie that in, it helps with the classroom.
Yeah, our dad.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay. And if you have any questions or if you want, October should be October 30th. So November, we shall have the final documents. So if you have any questions or if you want to learn more, look me up.
Any questions for Gail? on financials? If not, we're down to the consent agenda, and
Can I get a motion on that general fund, or do you want, it's 6.03.
and what would we be approving exactly?
The September general fund expense reports.
Okay, and those are solid.
Mhm. They are solid.
Entertaining a motion to approve the September financials.
So moved.
You'll have a second.
That'd be the newbie.
Second. Second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Stands approved.
The documents we were looking at were beta. These were actual. He
Okay,
said, yeah.
they're good to go.
They were
Okay,
good.
well, that general fund was missing, so then I was like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I did still
Okay.
include our cash,
Okay.
our banking information on this.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Is there any items that any of the board members would like to pull off the consent agenda before we make a motion to approve those?
I try to highlight the others, so if you have any.
Yeah. You want to pull up your summary report there,
sure.
and if that jogs anybody's memories to pull anything, otherwise we'll just approve those as. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Stands approved. Okay, the calendar. So, quite a few dates here. Got October 16th for a work session.
6 p.m. Or what?
I think it was 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And October 19th for SIAC. And Carrie, is that SIAC 6 o'clock?
7.
7? Is that 7 at the high school?
Do we have an approximate time? Did we set a time limit on the 16th, or are we guys gonna?
5 hours.
Okay.
Can it be off campus?
2.
2 hours. Okay.
Gonna need the open plan.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And then there's a optional work session for October 30th. That if we're diligent in our October 16th work, that we can free up our calendar. And I have November 13th is our regular meeting. And I also noted October 21st is the carnival at the middle school. Any other dates I missed? Covers it. Anything from the administrators, dates that you'd like the board to be aware of, or?
Our mental health awareness day, Mike, what day is that? Do you remember that?
The 26th.
The 26th, Thursday the 26th at 6:30.
If you get a chance, I know we put some things too in the school board updates, but if you get a chance, this is a great thing that they're working on, I think, with the guidance department. If you can make it there for a portion of it or all of it, that would be great.
What time does that run then?
Start at 6:30, it'll be at the high school.
It starts at 6.
Oh, it does?
6 to 8. 6 o'clock to 8:30.
6 to 8:30?
Is that just for parent, like just for
It's for
adults, right?
any, open to any community members, surrounding communities.
But not kids.
But not kids or kids, no kids.
No,
Is that correct?
I mean, I would think,
I think high schoolers could probably.
yeah, high school, I think it'd be very appropriate for
Yeah.
high school age.
And that's at the high school?
Just
Yeah.
What was the time again, just to
6 o'clock to 8:30.
Thank you.
Did anybody watch The Insiders Sunday morning? It was on mental health, and they interviewed a set of parents that were struggling. It was really, really interesting.
Great. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Got one. Do I have a second?
That seconded that.
You have a second to that? All right.
Yeah.
I had finger motion.
All opposed? We stand adjourned. Look at that. Still 8:45. Spotting you now.
Sorry, bad recorder. No, you're good.
Can anybody move until the county?